Hi, I'm Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Government, and today we're spotlighting the Hillsborough School Board and one of their members, Jack Lamb. Jack, wonderful to have you on the program.
Glad to be here.
You've been on the school board now for 12 years.
Yes, sir.
And you're running again, I understand.
Yes, much to my wife's objections, yes.
Do you have a masochist complex or something?
No, I just have a feeling that someone's got to stand up for our kids.
You know, I don't believe of all elective office, and I've looked at them all, there is one that gets the least respect, has the most problems, and that's the school board. You guys, if you do your job right, nobody's paying attention to you.
You sort of hit it on the head, yeah. We have large number of constituents, more than many other elected officials. If something goes wrong, we get front page press.
And you're right there.
And
you're easy to reach.
If something goes right, it's hard to get press. So it's a constant battle trying to get the message out to the public, because our future is our public education.
Is school board thought of as a full-time job, or is it considered a part-time job?
It's considered a part-time job, but it becomes very full-time, especially at this time of the year as things are winding down and graduations are coming up.
I can bet the hours get really long, because you're expected to be everywhere for everything, aren't you?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And we are the 8th largest school district, which many people do not realize, in the United States, with 193,000 students. So there are all types of activities, and everyone has their end of the year activity that they'd like you to be in attendance.
And you really want to try to be there to support them if you can, but it would seem to me, how many graduation ceremonies do we have just in Hillsborough County?
Well, that's a hard figure to come up with from the standpoint, we have 27 high schools. But we have 4 career centers, and we have a number of exceptional ed centers, and we have adult
and of
programs.
course, the 8th grade now has graduation too.
Yeah, we don't go to those. Yeah, right. So there are a large number, and because of the census, our districts have all been shifted somewhat. We just had a census, and we've been waiting for a while. Our legislature has to draw the lines and those types of things, and they were having a problem, and now it's in the judicial for approval. But my district is going to shift considerably, so I'm losing 10 schools, but I'm picking up 13 more.
Wow.
So I have 43 schools.
A net increase of 3, huh?
In District 3, right.
Wow.
District 3 is the northern part of the district.
Jack, let's take a look a little bit about you and your background and what you brought to the school board. First, I'd like to know, why did you decide to run for the school board 12 years ago?
I was sort of encouraged.
Those that won't found somebody that will, right?
Well, I've got a kind of a checkered past in terms of school districts. I started as an elementary teacher in a housing project in Ybor City.
Really?
And that was very interesting. And I then went to University of Tampa on a music scholarship. And so then I went to the University of Florida, because South Florida hadn't been built yet, and did my master's in elementary and got certified in leadership, ed leadership. And I taught and was drafted into a resource position to help new teachers. And then the superintendent came knocking and said, the university is going to be built here, and it could be a threat to the school system. We want you to get a doctorate. And I said, so I contacted a number of universities, and I was awarded a federal fellowship to work on a doctorate at Syracuse University. And I went there with my family. My wife had never seen snow. That was an experience. And so we were in Syracuse, where I did my residency, and I did some work with the State Department of New York. And it was to come back and head up the exceptional student program, special ed as some people call it.
So you got your doctorate up there?
In Syracuse, right.
So it's Dr. Jack Lamb,
Yes.
not just Jack Lamb.
No, EDD, Doctor of Education. And so I came back and I headed up the exceptional student program here, which grew very rapidly. A lot of people think of 1968 as the teacher walkout. It was, but it also was a year that the legislature wrote mandated legislation for exceptional student education. So our program grew very rapidly. We had a lot of money for hiring teachers, for training teachers, for building facilities. And so I did that, and I was drafted out of this system. And at the same time, I was also teaching at universities and doing some consulting work. So I've done a variety of things. Then I was drafted by Pinellas County to be their assistant superintendent for exceptional student education. So I've been here 26 years, went there for 15 years, and that program grew, and I grew in various positions. I became state president of some associations, and was a lobbyist also. The superintendent wanted me as a lobbyist for curriculum. So I had experience in the Tallahassee level. And one day in '96, I looked at my calendar and I told my secretary, I said, I've been doing this for 41 years. And
that was in '96.
'96, right. So I retired. And my wife, who was a teacher, and of course my mother was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, and my daughter's an administrator now, and my 2 grandchildren are going into education. So it's kind of in the blood. So my wife had retired, and she went back to work. So I didn't care to be a house husband. So 1 month as a retiree.
That's hard work.
I got a call, and they said, you know, we've had a search, and we don't care for any of our candidates. Would like you to be the executive director of the Administrators Association for Hillsborough County. So 1 month of retirement, I then became that executive director.
So you could hire a maid now to come
Right.
and do the housework. Okay.
So I did that for 3.5 years, and I was encouraged by a number of people in that association to run for school board. They said, you've done many things, why don't you try that? And we would really like you there because of your experience and your support of various factors of our programs, and especially your commitment to kids and education.
How many hours a week do you think you spend on school board business? What would you guess, just roughly?
It will vary. Again, like I said, this time of the year, it's probably 70, but you know, 30 hours is a good figure, I think.
So we're getting a guy with a PhD doing this job for probably $7, $8 an hour?
Or less.
Or less.
Yeah. EDD. There's a difference.
EDD,
right,
okay.
Right, between PhD and EDD.
That's right.
If you're a practitioner in education, they advise you to go into an EDD program.
All right, so it's still a doctorate.
Oh, yes, yes.
Still a doctorate.
Oh,
So
yes.
I'm safe with just saying doctor.
Right. That's what it says in the business card.
Let's drop back, with all this experience, let's drop back to your experience with working with young people in disadvantaged areas. Because our demographics here in Tampa are changing, and there's a lot of areas that we really need that kind of work. What do you think education can do to help us to lift these young people up?
Well, that's what we're doing with our Renaissance schools, and we pay teachers additionally to work in those schools, and we put. Of course, when I was doing this in the project, there was no Title I. There was no exceptional student education per se. It was just a very small amount. And so it took a lot of dedication primarily. And there was also no class sizes. My wife became an intern in that school, and her first grade class had 40 children, half of whom who didn't speak English. There was also no EOL, ELL, or the various kind of initials.
And they were probably like I was, all ADD.
Well on the way.
Of course, they didn't know what ADD was then either.
Right.
I just got whipped every other day.
Right. A lot of things have changed. But it takes dedication to work with Title I schools. We put additional funds in there because I feel very strongly, when I was state president of the School Board Association, you have to have a theme. And my theme was primarily based on equity, diversity, and so that's what I think is, we have to have a level playing field, and we don't.
Boy, I'd agree with you on that.
They don't come that way.
Well, kids mature at different levels.
Right.
In the 8th grade, I'm sorry, I hate to say this, but my teacher told my mother she hated me She was going to pass me out of the eighth grade because she hated me, and that I would never get through the ninth grade without going to reform school.
Your mother must have loved that message.
Oh, we were new to this country. My mother sat in tears. But the teacher didn't know how to reach me. Fortunately, I moved to another district, and a guy named Burt Rankin, God love him, he's dead now, but wherever he is, I hope he's listening in. He took me by the hand and showed me the way to go by answering my questions, not telling me just do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sit down and be quiet.
Yeah. Learn this, regurgitate it, but why? Well, never mind, just do it.
Well, I feel very strongly about reaching those children who are from disadvantaged homes. I also feel that students that are exceptional, and they come in a variety of ways. In Florida, the law says any child who deviates from the norm to the extent they need a specialized program, so it also includes the gifted. So I was responsible for gifted programs also. And that's a real challenge. But the district faces up to that, and we have a proud 23,000 students who qualify under state definitions for exceptional student education.
I guess my problem is I see kids getting shunned off, Jack, into learning disabilities or whatever, and they're really not. Somebody hasn't sat down. Are there programs to sit down and sift these kids out so that they're not just, they've been disruptive? Well, there may be a reason they were disruptive. Are there programs that help these kids that they just don't get sent off in the corner?
Yeah, well, we have a variety of programs in terms of, and there are also procedures that are spelled out. Guidance counselors work, social workers, psychologists. There's a referral process, and it's also, you don't get railroaded into those programs. There's a variety of referral process, evaluations that go through, observations. It's quite a complex and very intricate way of identifying students, and then the parents are brought in on the process. Once the child is identified in those programs, then by federal law, there are also all kinds of rules that come into play, and there must be an IEP, an individual educational plan, done and reviewed with the parents. Parents are very much a part of the whole process.
How do you feel about self-esteem training and lifting these kids up that way? Because many of them, they haven't been told you're a good and worthwhile person their entire life.
Mm-hmm. And we have programs for that also. And
do we?
Yes, we do. Character building. Our guidance counselors are responsible for a lot of that. And we have teachers that go in and get trained in summer institutes in terms of those types of things. We try to really make the most out of what we have. We're different than an industry. We have no control over our product. And even though a lot of people try to measure us as they would an industry, that's one of the problems we face in public education.
Well, let's talk about measurement. There's been a lot of talk in the newspapers and on the television about FCAT. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand on that? Maybe better yet, what is FCAT? As you see it with a PH or ED or
right.
a doctorate in education.
Yeah. Well, as I said, FCAT for some people is a four-letter word. It's a real problem. We believe in accountability. It's unfortunate that it's never been used as it should have been, and it's being used as a major measurement tool, which I think is wrong. There are different types of things. It could be a and we've been also advised, don't say it's a diagnostic tool, because it can be used as part of the diagnosis and evaluation process, but it's not an end-all, and that's where the problem comes in. There is no one test, there is no one way, and that's what the unfortunate thing is with FCAT.
What if a young person has trouble with the FCAT test? Are there alternatives for them? Are there different ways that they can?
They're beginning to have some different things, and our district led the state in terms of end-of-course exams. Now that's been being mandated by the legislature, but we're the leader and a model for that. But until the legislation changes completely, FCAT is the most powerful tool that we've been mandated to use, which is unfortunate.
You were talking about the legislature. You've got a big job, and I keep hearing the legislature talking about no tax increases, we're rolling taxes back and so forth. But it seems to me every time I hear that and I start looking at individual programs, they've cut things for education. How is your funding doing with the legislature? They're giving you mandates, but are they keeping up with them with the funding?
No, that's known as unfunded mandates. Our district has cut $145 million in the last 4 to 5 years, which is a sizable chunk.
Do you have less children?
No.
So you have more children to serve and less money to serve them with.
You hit it on the head, right. One of the problems we have is that we were growing for a period of time up to 7,000 students a year and building 11 schools in a year.
Wow.
Of course, then everything got flat. We never went absolutely flat. We went down to, we only grew by a few children, but then we started growing again, and we're now growing by several thousand students a year with no funds for that. And we also have a lot of legislation coming in for charter schools, which are a very good option, parent choice, but money is being siphoned off for charter schools. So that makes another belt tightening on the school system. We've taken a stance, and we're one of the few that we still believe in educating the whole child. So we still teach humanities. Many districts have had to cut humanities. Many districts have had to cut back on their teaching staff.
When you say humanities, are you talking about
art and music,
art
right,
and music?
primarily.
Okay.
And some places athletics have also come into the cuts. We've not pink slipped anyone, but we don't know how much longer we can keep going this way with the growth of, you mentioned, growth of students.
Well, you have a mandate on how many people can be in a class, too.
That's
do you
another
not?
thing that's come into play, right.
So, I mean, if
You have a number of
can't
factors.
really fire people and not,
Right.
if you're not going to build
There's
up
something wrong with that picture.
Yeah, there's something wrong here.
Right, right. And so you originally asked the role of a school board member. It's a tremendous, you might call it juggler or balancing balancing act in terms of how do you use your resources to maximize, because we have student achievement as our highest priority.
Having been an administrator in a system, in fact, 2 systems, one of the things I hear a lot from my very conservative friends, there's just too many administrators, too much money being siphoned off of the classroom and put into administration. How would you answer that?
That could be the case in some districts. It's not here. We have cut back on a lot of positions. We've really taken the knife out primarily in terms of the administrative areas. We've not cut back on the classroom teachers. We've tried to keep our teachers away from that situation. We also have tried to prepare our teachers and work with them for the pay for performance, another mandate from our legislators in terms of how we measure teachers and evaluate teachers. And so we've come up with some things, and we're being held harmless in terms of some of the things that have come about in some recent legislation, because they're looking at what we're doing in terms of evaluating our staff.
That pay for performance thing bothers me a little bit, I have to admit. I would expect everybody to do their very best regardless. If they took the job. I mean, any job I've ever taken in my life, whatever salary I agreed to take for it, I did the very best job I could do. And to say to somebody, well, we'll give you a few dollars more if you do a little, somehow there's something that makes me feel bad about that.
Yeah. Very little understanding, a lot of verbiage about pay for performance. We're in a process, and the whole country is, not only Florida, but everywhere in terms of pay for performance. Value added, these are some terms that you'll come up with in terms of this whole concept. And it's a work in progress, really. And as you probably know, we received a very large grant, the largest the school system ever has, in terms of the Gates grant. And that's changing how teachers are evaluated. And because of that grant, we now have a Wallace grant that has come in on how we also evaluate our administrators, because they are truly instructional leaders. So all of this is coming into play, and it's a work in progress. It's going to take several years for us to finally see if we're on the right track.
I'm a great believer in evaluation. I think good evaluation is very, very important. And I believe in a 360 evaluation system where everybody evaluates everyone. Teachers evaluate other teachers, students evaluate teachers, teachers evaluate the people sitting at the top. Is there anything like that or similar to that going on within your school system right now?
Parts of that are incorporated in the evaluation system, but no, not in terms of a full 360.
You know, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were in the classroom. You were in these schools. As a classroom teacher, you knew the ones that were out there working hard every day to really perform, and the ones that were just collecting a check. Better than probably even the administrators did. How do you get that kind of feedback into the evaluation mode?
Well, that's some of the things that are being incorporated in our evaluation system now, because we have peers and we have mentors, we have a variety of different types of classroom teachers that are involved in the evaluation. Our legislature have passed things that with no funds.
We keep going back to great ideas, but they're not funding them, right?
Right, and money drives the train. But that's an unfortunate thing. But they are incorporating many of the ideas that we're using with the Gates grant, but their percentages are much higher than ours are. And again, we were trying to do things and set a model, but the legislature moved ahead and did not take into consideration that we were already on that road. But they did give us a waiver so that we're being allowed some different percentages as some other places in the state.
Our timing of operation of our schools was really set during an agrarian time in this country. And it was set also because of air conditioning or lack thereof and that sort of thing. We've long since quit having to have kids, well, maybe not some of our school system, kids stay home and pick tomatoes. They're coming to school. They could be there 12 months a year, and yet we're not using our buildings and our system and all our teachers. Few companies could shut down for 3 months a year and still stay profitable. Is there any move to going around the year school system here? I know I've seen it in a couple of other areas.
Yeah. Well, you're from Ohio, so you raise tomatoes. Florida raised strawberries. We used to have strawberry schools, which operated on a different calendar.
Oh, really?
But we have an agrarian calendar. We tried several years ago to add some days, but it gets back to the almighty dollar. If you don't have the dollars to do it, how can you add days? This is what sets us apart from other countries. Our students have a shorter calendar, a shorter day, a shorter week, everything shorter, except the instruction materials keep increasing and increasing. We expect students to know more and more and more, but we're not giving time to teach. So that's a problem, but it goes back to the almighty dollar. You've got to fund those programs.
But if we went to a 12-month school system, we could have more students in less buildings. And we could utilize people who are highly educated and out there doing painting during the summertime to make a few bucks till school starts again.
We've experienced with 12-month school. We finally stopped the one school where we were doing that. Orlando did it for a while, and they stopped. We have a large.
What caused it to fail?
Put it out of sync. Families, many families were against the 12 months concept because it changed their calendars. We operate a very large summer instructional program. Many of our schools are open, but again, it comes back to, I hate to say it, the almighty dollar. You've got to have the dollars to do this.
But you have to have dollars to build a new school too, to take this additional people. How many schools do we have in the total system now in Hillsborough?
We have over 200.
Over 200. If you added 3 months of instruction to those 200 schools, that'd be a lot of classroom space.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would. But a lot will have to change in terms of concepts.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know, you are in an elected position, and a lot of people say, well, I didn't vote for them. But it doesn't matter whether somebody voted for you or not. You still represent everyone, isn't that correct?
That's right. And another thing I would like to make sure that people understand, we have 5 districts and 2 countywide of the 7 school board members. But we represent the total district. You don't represent just the district that, and you're only voted on, in my case, in District 3 by those people. You represent the whole district, and you make your decisions based that way.
Where is District 3?
The northern
Dr.
part of
Lamb?
the county.
Northern part of the county?
Right. Lutz, Carrollwood, New Tampa. Now it's been changed and moves way over to 39, which is the highway out of Plant City. So it moved eastward from the Pinellas line. I used to go up to Pinellas County line.
Did you get hit in this redistricting, or is that
Yeah,
just...
that
was it?
was it, right.
I watch school systems all over the country, and I so like this system. Up in Ohio, where I came from in Dayton, there are 13 schools, can you count them? 13 school systems surrounding Dayton, including Dayton. Each one with their own superintendent. Talk about top-heavy with administration.
Well, Florida is a very simple system. 67 counties, 67 school districts. There's no such thing as white flight because everything is operated within the district. When I went to Syracuse,
Yeah, I like that too.
Onondaga County had much smaller than Hillsborough County, which is larger than Rhode Island, had 16 school districts, 16
Wow.
superintendents, 16 personnel departments, 16 maintenance departments. Whereas I agree with you, you know, you can be very top heavy in a number of those types of situations. Some of those places didn't even have high schools. They had to pay tuition for their kids to go to someplace else because there weren't enough students. So I do believe the concept is much better in the county system because you do not have urban and suburban schools, you have one school district.
Jack, I have so enjoyed you coming on the show. Dr. Jack Lamb, School Board, Hillsborough County. Would you consider coming back?
I'd be very happy to.
I've got a whole lot more questions to ask you. We've just run out of time. So I thank you for being with me. We'll have you back again as soon as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bill Hodges. This is Spotlight on Government, and we've had with us today Dr. Jack Lamb, Hillsborough School Board member. Remember, you're unique, you're special, and you're great. Tell yourself so often because you are, you know. And we'll see you on the next Spotlight on Government. And again, Dr. Lamb, thanks so much for being with me. And I've got your promise. Now you come back.
Thank you.